Oh, here they come. Hi, everybody. Just going to let everyone log on. Oh, going well. Lots of numbers. Welcome, everybody. Excellent. Hopefully it's not as rainy and windy down in Melbourne as what it is here in Sydney. We're having a terrible day for weather.
No, we've had lovely weather the last few days.
Oh, we are freezing and it's torrential rain. Okay, everyone's piling in, which is great. All right, just a couple that are just signing in right now. Hi, everybody. All right, great. We'll kick it off. So welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for a Tuesday afternoon to be dialing in to this afternoon's webinar. Today is a webinar that I guess from not a webinar, it's more of a question and answer session. It's a session for you to be able to talk to us. We've got the whole team here today for you to ask questions from, and we've also got some very special guests who are going to talk to us at the end about their experiences in shutdown 1, what they did, how they did it, and then what they're doing now. So that's some good pointers to walk away with. But let me introduce you to the team. So today was about in response to shutdown 2.0 of how you've gone, what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're doing, any questions that you might need help with. So we thought we'd get the whole team together for you to be able to ask us anything you want. So let me introduce you to everybody, and then you can either direct your questions directly to them or direct them in general to the chat box down the bottom. There's a question and answers and also chat box. So that way I can point you in the right direction and we can get all your questions answered. Wes will also open up with a bit of an industry update as well. But let me introduce you to the team. So give me 1 second, I'll share my screen. Okay, so we have Wes Lambert. Can I get a thumbs up that you can see my screen to start with? Kate, I can see your face. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So we've got Wes Lambert, CEO. We have myself. We have Tom Green, Head of Policy and Government. Tom's the man who's got all the news before the news gets it. So he's going to share us with some insights and also some links on stimulus packages that you can be pointed in the right direction to. Victor Song is the IR man, so he's going to answer any questions regarding staff and industrial relations. And then, of course, we have Anthea Nomikos, who is our membership manager for Victoria. So we also have our special guests. So I'll just introduce you to our special guests quickly. So we've got Kate from Coda, we've got Barry from Sorrento Catering, and we've got Anthony from Mosetta. So we'll hear from those guys towards the end. But at the moment, I'll also just point you in the right direction for your questions and answers down the bottom. We'll either type them in or share some links with you if that's the best way, or we'll answer them live for you. And then, of course, feel free to chat amongst yourselves. But with no further ado, I will hand over to Wes to do a little bit of an industry update, look at the next 6 to 8 weeks, some key dates you need to be aware of, and a bit of an overview from the industry from his point of view. So over to you, Wes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Restaurant and Catering's webinar this afternoon, and I very much appreciate you signing in. You're all in Melbourne, so you know you're under lockdown, and we are very sorry that that has happened. It is unfortunate, but we are going to help you push through it. The news of the day is obviously that the South Australian border is now not reopening with New South Wales. New South Wales pubs and hotels are under increased restrictions, a cap of 300 people maximum, 10 at any one party, and there has to now be marshals, and there will be a renewed push for all of the COVID-safe business plans for all hospitality businesses. And now Queensland has named a couple of hotspots where you cannot travel from other states to Queensland. So it seems like we're heading in a more negative direction. Not a good thing to hear, but that's just the truth. Very soon, in 9 days, we'll be hearing about what's going to happen to JobKeeper, JobSeeker, and every stimulus that is attached to those programs. So there are many things that are attached, including the mandatory landlord code of practice, VAS top-ups. There's a lot of things that that will be decided on that decision. I was on the phone with Charlotte Tressler today, who's the head of the coronavirus business unit for Treasury. We had an hour-long phone call that was quite candid, and she did indicate that something was coming, but that because of these most recent concerns around the country, that those plans are not formalized. So there is no one in the country that can tell you accurately that they know what is coming on the 23rd of July, because it's not yet figured out. They are waiting to see exactly what happens over the next 9 days. If New South Wales goes further, if Queensland and New South Wales border ends up shutting, if we go into any stage 4 lockdowns in Victoria, which may be announced this afternoon at 4 o'clock, may not. We believe that news, press conference is more about the Army coming into Victoria than it is about stage 4. But that, again, you cannot control the premiers and what they say and do. We're not hearing the chatter about stage 4 yet, but Tom will be able to tell you more about that. And this is the road to 19 August. That date cannot be firm. And the reason why it cannot be firm is because no one can predict which way the outbreak's going to go. There were lots of comments 2 days ago that the infection rate was going to decrease, and then all of a sudden it was 270 overnight. And so ultimately, dates are all loose. When you're making your business decisions, you need to understand that no one can confirm that the 19th of August is a hard and fast date. The most reliable date we have going forward is 23 July. We will all know about what's going to happen with wage stimulus on 23 July. After that, it is certainly anyone's best educated guess, but the 19th of August, just like the 12th of July, was a target date. Ultimately, it's about suppressing the outbreak and working hard to get to that date. At that date, we do not expect that things will go back to normal. They'll likely go back to 20. Then 2 or 3 weeks go by, and then 50, and then 2 or 3 weeks go by, and then moving back to where we thought we would be, probably around the time that the original JobKeeper was to end. So late September, early October. So those are the kind of the dates looking forward. As I said, the industry is sort of in a holding pattern right now, but on the East Coast, because of the outbreaks in Victoria. Certainly we'll take any questions that you have. We speak to national cabinet ministers, and state premiers every day. So being in contact with us, being in contact with R&CA, calling us in head office and utilizing your membership in restaurant and catering is so important, because we keep the most up-to-the-minute information on our coronavirus hub, and we're getting that information often before it's actually made public. So I do thank you for coming on, and I wish that I'd had better news as far as timelines and some surety, but unfortunately things are in a negative cycle at this point, which is why we're here to answer your tough questions and be candid and honest, so we can all make it through this better.
Tom, did you have anything further that you wanted to add on those whispers that Victoria's hearing on stage 4?
Yeah. So what we do know is that the Victorian Premier is due to make an announcement later today. What we believe that announcement will be about is to announce a formal engagement of the ADF to assist in managing the testing process and the lockdown procedures more broadly across the state. Now, that's also from a border perspective, and also in the border areas between lockdown and non-lockdown areas, so regional, non-regional. Obviously, there might be more information as part of that, but the ADF and the Victorian government have been speaking for quite a while around if the army was to come in, to use that phrase that obviously would concern a lot of people, what would be the things that they would be doing? I think I doubt that they will move into a further restriction in terms of affecting those areas in Metro Melbourne that are already locked down, because it would take them to a point that is beyond anything that any state and territory has actually taken in terms of a lockdown, where metropolitan Melbourne is now was generally where the country was back in late March, early April, where takeaway and where you're only allowed to basically leave your home for those 4 key reasons. And the hospitality sector broadly was able to continue for takeaway and delivery. For them to go a further step than that, I think would continue to only affect perhaps the reasons that someone might leave their home. I don't think it would necessarily affect the operation of takeaway and delivery. It might.
Tom,
I don't know that 100%,
your internet is a bit funny at the moment. I'm not sure if it's just me or not.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Actually, Belle, you've frozen as well.
Hello, Belle, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm still here then.
I can hear you, Tom.
Yeah, wonderful. So look, I think what I might do as well is just speak through very, very quickly whilst we kind of assist Belle in getting everything up and running, is just to talk through what the government did announce last week in regards to a further stimulus program. And I think there's a couple of important things to note here, and this has been kind of our general advice to our Melbourne members that have called through, as well as more generally in other states and territories. I think it's reasonable to look at the amount of money that was put aside for, the hospitality sector broadly from the state government and say, look, that kind of does look quite paltry, or that does look quite small in terms of the amount of businesses that are affected. That $5,000 grant is going to be burned through pretty quickly by most hospitality businesses in terms of just merely covering the losses that are found from, say, even stock under this period. But I think, and I think this is why the next 9 days are going to be so critical, because the way I phrase it is the amount of money that the federal government is spending on direct business assistance is to a factor of like 100 to 1 greater than what any state government will spend on supporting that industry. And it's because the federal government has more touch points with those businesses through things such as the ATO and the BAS system and the ability to kind of lodge those statements. Their ability to provide those businesses with funds and assistance is a lot greater. Whereas from a state government perspective, if you're a small cafe, for example, you don't pay payroll, you don't pay, and you don't have a liquor license, the only real interaction that you would have in a general sense from the state government in terms of fees and costs would be your local council through rates. So it does make sense that a lot of that support will come from a federal perspective, and that's why that most of the support that the state government will provide will be small cash grants and will be measures that assist in the levers that they already have under their control, which is obviously payroll tax, liquor licensing, and then a few other kind of smaller peripheral issues. And that's why, our number one priority from a stimulus perspective has been about making the case for JobKeeper to extend, which I'll go into more generally later. What I'll do is I'll pop the link in the chat for everyone here, for everyone to access those new grants that have come through, or the new stimulus measures that were announced on Friday. I think the most important one that has been put forward is that further $5,000 cash payment that has gone through for businesses who've been affected by the lockdown. So this is businesses who would have otherwise have been able to operate that because of the decision to lock down that metropolitan Melbourne area and Mitchell Shire are now unable to continue to operate in the way that they would. Again, it's obviously not going to cover a substantial amount of the loss in those certain businesses, but it does make it will make a small bit of difference. And I think until we know for sure the date of, until we know for sure the outcome of that JobKeeper review, which is going to be released on the 23rd of July, the federal government has been very, very clear that that is the date that they will be making that announcement, that we're not really going to know much more until then. What the federal government has told us very clearly, as in this is beyond all doubt is that there will be a program that will exist beyond September for the most affected industries. And our sector is at the top of that list, along with a few others. So we do know that something will exist. That something, in terms of what the value is, how you go about applying for it, and all of those details, won't be known until the 23rd. And the reason that we won't know until the 23rd is that the federal government wants to wait as long as possible before they make that announcement. Because as we know, take Victoria, 9 days is a lifetime in the terms of the way that we are approaching these coronavirus restrictions. New South Wales, for example, might look a lot different in 9 days compared to the way it looks now. And I know that that is not exactly something that will necessarily bring everyone a lot of comfort in terms of having to wait that long, but it is just so important. It's been our kind of my plea to every member that I've spoken to, which is just to hold tight until the 23rd, because we will know more then, and that will give you a better opportunity for you to structure the decisions that you make in your business around the type and level of support that you will get. And we will know more on the 23rd. We hear whispers, we hear rumours, we hear ideas, but I don't think even the Prime Minister knows right now what that program will look like, because they're going to want to make that decision and finalise that decision as late as possible. And I think that's the kind of key point to note on JobKeeper. So, Belle, unless you wanted to kind of keep going, I wasn't sure if you'd look back.
I just, I dropped out on internet. I don't know what happened.
I was happy to fill the time.
I missed a little bit.
Yep.
We've had a lot of questions on postcodes. I don't know, did you answer the postcode question, or you didn't hear me before?
No, I may not have heard you. Apologies.
So we've had a lot of members confused about checking postcodes and who they can allow in, who they can serve, what they need to do. Do we have any further information on controlling, who's coming to their venues and checking those postcodes?
Yeah, so we've got some advice that I think we released on Friday in relation to this, and we'll reissue that tomorrow as part of our Victorian EDM. But I think the most important thing to know, and my advice on this is as much around common sense as possible. If you're operating a venue outside of the restricted area, so that's obviously a business where you can serve people for dine-in, and you want to be able to ensure that the customers that are attending your business are the correct customers and they're not breaching lockdown, you have the ability, you have the freedom to ask that they present to you a form of identification that lists their postcode. The simplest way for you to do that would be their driver's license, because obviously that will contain their postcode. And if that customer were to reasonably refuse that, which certain customers will do, if you have a liquor license, my advice to them from a practical perspective is ask that you need to check that they are of legal age to be able to be served in your business. And then you have a legal right to ask for that driver's license to be shown. And if they still refuse, then you are perfectly allowed to refuse service. And by using that liquor license, I don't want to call it a loophole, but by using that liquor license technique, it ensures, if you want to go to that extra step, that you can effectively screen every customer through that business. And I guarantee you that every Victorian that lives in an area that is not under lockdown will want to know that if they're dining at a venue, that there is not someone there that is breaching lockdown. I guarantee you will not get customers being upset that you've asked them, or that you're going the extra mile to make sure that your venue is as safe as possible.
Great. I guess a big part of where our members are at is also what can I do with my staff again? Where am I at? I'm at ground zero. I've just brought everybody back to work. I've just been gearing up. I've got had reservations. I've brought the team back. Probably Victor, more over to you. I know that we released some information last week about what people can do with the staff and some legalities around that. Victor, do you want to talk us through about the different things they can do and offer those staff regarding location of work, etc., and talk us through that with stand downs and opportunities of the staff?
Yep, sure, Bill. So basically, employers, you have two options. So dealing firstly with staff on JobKeeper. So JobKeeper's in effect until the 18th of September. The 28th of September. And employers can issue a JobKeeper direction, provided one, that it's provided in writing, and employees are given 3 days notice. And basically what you can do following issuing a JobKeeper direction is that you can stand down an employee entirely, or you can simply reduce their ordinary days of work down. For example, if somebody's working 38 hours a week, full-time employee, their hours can be reduced down to, for example, 15 or 20 to meet the demands of your business. You can also, as part of the JobKeeper direction, direct any employee to work outside their duties and classifications, provided, of course, that it's within their skill set and competency. And if you do have a store outside of an affected area in Melbourne, you can also direct an employee to work, to relocate staff to that particular store, provided that it is appropriate and safe to do so. And basically, you know, you also have the option to reduce an employee's annual leave, provided that it's no less than 2 weeks. And if there is a sort of dispute that arises during the course of the consultation, and whether if you're not able to reach a particular agreement, you can rely on the relevant dispute resolution clause in the relevant ward, unless you have something else, a related provision to that effect in your contract of employment. The second option is basically for employees not covered by JobKeeper, and that's simply relying on the extension to the restaurant industry award and the hospitality award, and that's virtually the similar dates as the JobKeeper legislation. So that extension is valid until the 27th of September this year. And under that extension, employers can direct any employee to work any sort of classification. So it's very similar to the JobKeeper legislation. You can also reduce a full-time employee's hours down week down to 22.8. And that also goes for part-time employees. You can reduce their hours down to 60%. And also the same thing with JobKeeper. You can reduce any sort of annual leave down to a balance of 2 weeks. But it's really important also to know that any leave, as a direction of that made under the Restaurant Award, that leave period must start before the 13th of September, but it can end any time after that date. Basically, under the obligations under the Restaurant Award, all directions even have to be reasonable and in writing. And of course, if there is a sort of dispute that arises under that, refer to the dispute resolution clause or your contract of employment.
Okay, so the key things are they need 3 days notice in writing. You're able to offer them to a different job within their skill set. They are able to offer them to work in a different venue that still they're able to get to and is safe. And of course, that if they're not under JobKeeper, with the changes to the award, we can reduce down their hours down to the 20.8. Was it 20 or 22.8?
22.8.
22.8, and reduce part-timers down to 60%. So they're the key things there. I missed a question from Jill, probably more directed to Tom, about the payroll tax waivers in Victoria for those of us who do pay it. What would be your opinion there, Tom, with what they need to do? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, Tom.
I'm here. They have, so they've obviously already announced, they announced two things. One was the back payment of payroll during the initial coronavirus response, which was to the end of March, and that was a refund of the payroll paid. And then they also added in a waiver of payroll to the end of June. Now, from my memory, and I'm just refreshing it now, that there wasn't a payroll section that was included in the most recent business support package. But I think the key thing to note is that that the Victorian government isn't quite done in terms of its response to, or its economic response to this second lockdown. I think you will see more announcements. We've certainly put firmly that for those larger businesses who do fall under that payroll kind of umbrella, that these kind of waivers are quite useful, and it is quite it is a really, really simple way for the state government to remove a cost that would otherwise be due. You know, it would otherwise be a bill that would sit on your P&L that you would have to reconcile with it when it is due. So I guess it's a bit of a watch this space arrangement, but the main point is that we certainly haven't seen the end of their economic response to the coronavirus, and I would expect to see some more announcements from them in more specific ways over the coming weeks. But we are speaking to them about payroll. That's the short answer.
Okay, and we have another question from Romy. Romy's a caterer, and there are numerous differences with venues, restaurants. Are there any specific grants and subsidies that we can apply for support as a caterer?
So for catering as a specific one, no. However, all businesses that have been affected do fall under this new $5,000 grant that they've organised. So that would be probably the most immediate source of support for you, for any caterer essentially to be able to access, and that's a really important measure. And I've popped that link into the sorry, I popped it to all the panelists, and then
that's okay. I shared it to everybody.
Yeah, shared it to everyone else. Sorry. Making sure that you go through those grants and understand what you are eligible for or not eligible for. If that's something, and I should say your financial advisor, whether it's an accountant, can also help you prepare the relevant documents for those things. But if you do need some further assistance, or you are looking for some more specific advice, feel free to give us a call here at R&CA. Part of my team, which is Victor and myself, that do the policy and government work, we've been assisting members with understanding what they are eligible for, whether that's state, federal, even local. The City of Melbourne, as a local council area, has got quite a expansive set of economic relief measures that they've put in place. And it's basically our job to assist you in decoding some of the kind of mix of all of that stuff to make it simpler for you to understand. So don't be afraid to give us a call. It's, you know, it's what we're here for. It's how we can assist.
So what advice have we got for businesses who may have had some rent relief, but then when they went back to work and were operating again within venue dining, their rent went back to normal or increased again? What's our advice to our members on what to do now and how to negotiate back again with our landlords?
Wes, did you want to take this in the first instance, and then I might come in after you, if that makes sense?
So ultimately, the mandatory landlord code of practice, as well as the state guidelines to the Retail Leases Act in each state that codified the mandatory landlord code of practice, are still in effect, which means that even if you have made a deal with your landlords, you are still in a period where you can readdress the situation as it has presented itself. So for example, if you agreed with your landlord that when you reopened, you would start paying rent again, well, now you are no longer open. So, you know, ultimately this will go down to whose lawyer drafted any amendments to your lease, you know, whether it said reopen in terms of being open or just the actual first fact of reopening. Look, ultimately, if you're having any problems with your landlords, that is what we're here to do, is help you and help your landlord understand that they are bound by that mandatory landlord code of practice, as well as the state temporary changes to the Retail Leases Act. And certainly you have never signed your rights away under that mandatory landlord code of practice. There are special tribunals in each state that have been set up to mediate those disputes. And I promise that those tribunals err on the side of tenant, especially now that we're in a sawtooth recovery. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that as well, and you know, I'm making a rod for my own back here, but don't be afraid to get in contact with us if you do need assistance. It is what we are here for. I think we also have a partnership with Lease One, which is a fantastic service which assists retail tenants with negotiating with their landlord and ensuring that they get the best deal. And they've been around well before COVID was in existence or any of those things, and they assisted in that negotiating process. They do provide a level of free service for R&CA members as part of that free service. So if it is something where you do actually need someone to kind of go into bat for you and assist you in preparing some of these matters, but you don't want to shell out for a lawyer to start firing off letters to your landlord, these are the people that are quite well suited at negotiating and mediating in a fair and reasonable way on your behalf. And I've referred many members to them who've only ever had a positive experience. So if you are in that situation where you find, because some landlords are fantastic and they understand and they do the right thing and they are very common sense. They understand that if they lose a tenant now, their likelihood of being able to fill that space is slim and none. However, there are plenty of others out there who still have their head buried in the sand and they think that all their commercial property is going to be worth just as much magically at the end of COVID as it was before. And that's where kind of Lease One and R&CA can assist in kind of helping you get the best deal. And, every dollar you save in that area is a dollar that's going to get you closer to being able to reopen at the other end of this. So we're here to help, essentially.
That's good advice, Tom. We've had a little message from Karina on any advice or assistance for wedding venues that are facing more requests for refunds.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and you have to excuse the kind of long beginning statement here, but it's interesting. The contracts that you sign with your guests, and usually if it's for a wedding, quite a large function, is they will generally be contracts that are signed. They're actually regulated as consumer products, so they're regulated in the same way that you would be regulated if you bought a fridge from Harvey Norman, and that means that the customer and the consumer does have certain kind of rights that they are able to hold to in the event that they are mistreated. And then what you end up with is a wonderful bit of, and we've seen it in every other state across Australia, people start throwing around things like frustrated contracts. They start throwing around phrases like force majeure and acts of God and I need all my money back. And the reality is that on both sides, whether it's the customer or the venue, neither is able to fulfill the contract at the moment. As part of a submission that we have been successful in proceeding through in New South Wales and in Queensland, and we're in the process of putting together in Victoria prior to kind of the restrictions being wound back. We actually put forward basically a code of practice that was to help kind of venue operators or wedding venues and customers reach an agreement in terms of the way that they would seek to mediate these disputes, where you have a guest who might say, well, I was originally booked for 300 people. I now only want to do 30, or I want to do 100. And you say, well, you've got a contract that you signed very clearly that says that you have 300 people coming to a wedding. And that's where there's kind of a bit of difficulty. Again, so many of these things are circumstantial. So my strong advice is to give us a call, where I'm happy to provide a copy of what we put together for the Victorian government to help you negotiate with your client. But I think the thing to note here is that it's different to other restaurant and cafe arrangements, whereby that client can actually go to the state consumer affairs agency and challenge a contract where you as the business is actually, in their mind, treating them unfairly. And they do have a lot more rights to be able to challenge in that area, including taking you to the state-based kind of small claims tribunal there. So it's important that you negotiate those processes in a very careful way. And again, we're here to help in those areas, and we can certainly provide as much advice as we can. So Karina, happy for you to get in contact with me directly by calling in, and I can see what I can do to assist.
And then Angela's also sent a message through about, will there be any assistance to regional businesses that rely on tourism while the restrictions are in place in Melbourne?
Yeah, so as part of the stimulus that was announced on Friday did include an amount of money to assist regional businesses who did have refunds that occurred. So this is where you had money that was booked within your business that then had to be cancelled or refunded as a result of the restrictions coming into effect. So that would obviously have limited utility for things like restaurants, big function centres that obviously had dates booked that would affect them. But obviously it's more geared towards hotels and other businesses like that, where they tend to take a lot of the money up front and then have to then refund that money in the event that the person cannot attend. But there was an amount of money from memory, I'm just reading through here, they actually had $40 million set aside for that arrangement. So I'd ask you to go and have a look. If that doesn't affect you, or if it's more generally speaking around a cafe or restaurant that relies on tourism dollars coming through for those bookings, but there's no money taken in advance, then I think it's unlikely that there's going to be money that's set aside in that area. I think it's more likely to be a heavy investment in stimulus on the other side of this to encourage people from in what they call intrastate travels, that's Melburnians travelling to regional areas, or interstate travel, which is people from other states coming to Victoria once the lockdowns do lift.
So I guess the other key point is about food cost. So I think that venues started to start buying back all their food and replenishing the shelves in the cool rooms again. I know a few of our special guests today also did some creative things in stage 1 of lockdown. I might hand over to Anthea for you to introduce a couple of our panelists so that they can explain how they handled stage 1 and what they did regarding stock and the way that they pivoted their business.
Okay, well, leading in, I suppose we'll speak to Kate, because you had an excellent example of how you and your staff, as soon as lockdown 1 was announced. Kate, can you tell us about how you pivoted your business just to deal with the changes in trading over that first period?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. We were very, very lucky. I was in quarantine at home with my little boy, and it looked like we were going to be closed down. It was about the 26th of March. It was around that time. And our bookkeeper came down and said, right, and she's also a chef, she said, let's open the cool room. We're going to cryovac everything and we're selling it tonight. And I was like, who are we selling it to? And she's like, I've called my local IGA. They've got a nice deli and that's where we're going to sell it. I was like, what? This is a ridiculous idea. So I said, no one wants to buy cold cryovac food. And it turns out everybody wants to buy cold cryovac food. Thank God nobody listened to me, because I would absolutely have gone down the kind of Uber Eats line, and I would have been so wrong. That, you know, and what's happened now as a result of her doing that, we had our food cryovac within 3 hours. One of our girls went to Officeworks and we printed our logos and a whole lot of stickers, and that was it. Stickers on bags, and we were selling within 3 hours. You know, I think our situation, we've been incredibly fortunate, and it's been, you know, I look around and I understand, talking to all my friends and peers, gosh, we're lucky. And since then, my business partner, Adam, our chef, he said, well, I'm going down the coast, so why don't we put it on Instagram that we're going to deliver to like Portsea and Sorrento? And it just went like wildfire. And, you know, we just couldn't believe it. He was driving, we ended up buying a refrigerated van for about $20,000. And it's been, you know, it's constantly in use. We can't get enough of it. And now we do 2 regional deliveries a week. So we'll deliver to your home any address in a particular area we're going to. We might pick, you know, for example, Dalesford, and then we'll pick 10 neighbouring towns. And we get in our van and off we go. And so people can pre-order online and we'll drop it to your door, obviously contact free. And then the incredibly fortunate thing about our story is we've now got 20 grocers around Victoria who have been unbelievably supportive. And now it means that we're doing about 100 kilograms of butter chicken a day, just that one dish. So, you know, I just go to sleep at night and count my lucky stars. And the big thing on that night, you know, it was sort of a Friday and we knew things were coming and we knew we were probably going to have to shut down. And my husband and my business partner, we said, right, what is the number one priority here? And the number one priority has always been, we've got to keep everyone has to keep their jobs. That's the number one thing. So we've been able to keep every single one of our visa staff fully employed on their original wage. And that's all come out of the takeaway. So, and everyone else is working, and they have been since day one. So we're incredibly lucky.
That's an amazing story, Kate. Now, what are you going to do? I'm assuming that this new change that you made to the business means that you'll probably continue this on, or will you stop at the end when everything goes back
everybody
to...
asks. If you and everybody else as our guests feels like that's okay for our brand, if you guys feel comfortable with that, we're very responsive to people's feedback. Look, we're, in Boccaccio's and Toscano's and Gumtree, and if you guys feel that that's appropriate, we'd love to keep doing it, because obviously it's an extra revenue stream for us. So from where I'm sitting as a business owner, I'm just thinking, gosh, we're lucky. Imagine if that could be a new opportunity for us without damaging the brand too much.
It's great that, considering, Kate, that the CBD venues have been greatly affected. I know in the suburbs they've benefited a lot from people working from home. So it's a really positive story and something for a lot of other venue operators to think outside the square. And of course, it's great when you've got an excellent team of people behind you, as you did, to really think outside the square. So I think Barry, I'll just introduce Barry Iddles. Now, we selected Barry because he actually has quite a number of venues all around sort of different regional areas. So he's got a Sorrento catering company, which is in metropolitan Melbourne. And so that's locked down. Now, Barry, you also have 360Q, which is an amazing restaurant and function space right on the Queenscliff waterfront. Barry's also got Elk, which Creek, and he also runs a venue at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Cranbourne. So Barry, you've had a really interesting experience throughout all of this, so if you can please share with all.
Thank you for having me. Round one was interesting. I had all our takeaway packages 1 week prior to getting into lockdown. I could see the writing on the wall. Queenscliff has got a population of 900 permanent residents, so we are not big. Our bread and butter comes from Portsea and Sorrento, but, they were locked down. They're locked down now. We're fortunately still trading there, but while we were locked down the first time, we had cooking classes every Thursday on Zoom, which we had 20 people every week paying $45, $50. I had an international company pick it up, so Miyagi picked it up for a worldwide cooking class. So that's now pimped out to 70,000 people. They pay $99 to be a subscriber. So it's very good money. I did a postcard drop. So you can do an unaddressed postal service. Now, bit the bullet, you've locked down. So day one, we started doing 14-day isolation packs. So we sold 45 of those immediately. So that gave us revenue for 2 weeks. We delivered Monday for 4 meals, Friday for 3 meals. So we only did Queenscliff and Point Lonsdale. Then we started getting out and doing the postcard drop. We did 11,000 postcards, which took in Barwon Heads, Ocean Grove, Point Lonsdale. So that quadrupled our revenue immediately. I did Zoom dinner parties and off we went. So that kept us going first time round. This time, Queenscliff is still operational, but we've lost our Portsea set. However, we can send food over on the ferry, not cutting Kate's market. Our turnover probably will drop. We went back, we were 120% up in turnover for June on last year because we had a lot of space. So we have 5 dining spaces, so around about 100 people per hour and a half. So it was fantastic. Now I consider that will drop dramatically. The Australian Gardens, which is Cranbourne, is part of Royal Botanic Gardens. So I spoke to the chef out there who has an amazing social media following. I said, this time the gardens are not closing. So we will promote health and wellness walks. So you can go out in pairs and walk around the gardens, grab some takeaway, grab some coffees, and you know, it's doing fine. Everyone's on JobKeeper. It's about keeping everyone in work. It's about keeping their mental health going, and so they're doing fine. So their turnover, it's not magic, but it's enough to keep them a job. And then I have Falls Creek, which is probably somewhere I shouldn't even be. I'm fortunate enough to have 3 great landlords. So the government, no rent, they refunded me the first quarter of rent. Queenscliff, I went to the landlord and said, the building was empty for 4 years. Do you want it empty for another 4? I'll have to leave. So I still have that rent free. Elk at Falls Creek, I said to Leanne, I have no desire to go to the snow this year. It's not going to be an amazing season. We're restricted to numbers. Queensland border, South Australian border, New South Wales border, all shut. We're still doing premium dining. We've got quite a few Melburnians that are staying up here, and they're all quite well heeled. So it's $100 to go into a little dining room of 10, $100 a head. They get a glass of champagne. They tend to spend probably $120 a head on drinks. So at the moment, it's surviving. We're doing a few deliveries of meals. They've cleared the roads. The lift company finished us off on Thursday. They decided they'd close the lifts with 23 minutes notice. Most of the operators up here were about to jump off the buildings. I just live every day as the day. You cannot undo what's done. You can't stress about anything. It's like flicking a light switch. Just turn the light switch off, stay focused on today, think outside the square, think what you can actually do.
That's great, Barry. That's some really great ideas there for people. Now we'll move on to Anthony. And Anthony owns quite a good size venue in Main Street, Mornington. And as people, if people don't know, Main Street's got numerous restaurants and cafes, really busy area, lots of locals and tourists. Anthony, you did really well in the first lockdown with some really creative ideas, and I think you an excellent example of constantly communicating with your customers. Can you let us know what sort of bits and pieces you did through lockdown 1?
Yeah, no worries. Look, I hate the cliche of pivot, but that's probably what we did the most, unfortunately, was we just started originally with doing delivering fruit and veg boxes, partnering with a local fruit and veg supplier. I think we sold probably about 1,000 fruit and veg boxes within the first week or 2, and that enabled me to keep my staff employed. So they were delivering on a day-to-day basis to local area. We then kind of evolved into supporting our local, feeding the front lines, supporting our local nurses and doctors and things like that. And then that evolved again onto home deliveries 7 days a week. So throughout that whole period, I was able to keep all my staff employed, which is fantastic. Even things like Mother's Day, we really focused hard. And I think we did about 600 meals delivered on Mother's Day alone. So, that was not a bad result. What we did do is we focused really hard, even though cash flow wasn't there, is that we really put a lot of energy into our marketing and communicating to not only our staff, but to, the followers. Even little things like having the time to upload all those datas from all those bookings from years and years, getting that into a solid database and sending it to an email and a text message, reminding people that we're open 7 days a week. So that communication was really strong. We engaged someone to assist us from sponsoring our social media posts. And that was hugely successful for us. I think it also not only increased our followers, but when we did get the opportunity to reopen, we had this different angle of new followers. We had this new income stream of all these home deliveries. So we really just made sure that what we did over that 6 weeks was something we could continue on with after that 6 weeks was up, or longer period now. So the restrictions enabled us to kind of figure out what we were and what we were going to be and really kind of pivot from that point. So yeah, things like Mother's Day, 600 meals delivered was, just a great result.
Yeah. And
you did
amazing.
You did amazing, like make it at home kits, even simple things to involve families and kids, like you did and hot chocolates. And so it was all, obviously all those little bits, it's just a way of getting people involved. And you look at your, families and various sort of different groups of customers that you do have. And just, I think those little things just build fun and excitement and just a really good feel for people that when you did reopen, you said you sort of boomed during the time. You had that increased sense of loyalty.
I think one of the things that we've got to remember is that there's a lot of people with stay-at-home kids right now. So if you can kind of pivot what you do for kids and target that to take home, make it yourself at home, will really probably get a lot of social engagement from the mothers in particular, and it just gives something for the kids to do. So it's probably a really good angle that if anyone out there, think of how you can pivot from that point and just really find something that's engaging for a family component.
Some really great ideas, everybody. And we had many members that we wanted to invite to share what they've done and how they've done it. But thank you so much to Kate and Barry and Anthony for sharing those ideas. And I love the idea about the targeting the parents of the kids, because I think that you're probably all going crazy down there of how to entertain those kids at home. So well done, everybody. I've got one more question from Peter around updates on details around penalty rates or redundancy payments to assist operators. Tom, did you want to talk about this, or Wes?
Let me start again, and then we'll go into Tom. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it very, very clearly. There are no plans in the industry roundtables to lower penalty rates right now. I know that it is the #1 thing that all restaurateurs and hospitality businesses hate. I hate it too, but I didn't put them in place. I started this job 1 year and 3 months ago. Everyone that you're looking at here, besides Anthea, was not here 1 year and 3 months ago. It is not our fault. Penalty rates have been a thing that has been going on in the IR space for all businesses in all of Australia for 10 years. And the unions fight to get them, and labor fights to get them, and liberals and business owners fight to get them removed. Well, and this is what happens. And so I can tell you, and the Attorney General will tell you, that the wage roundtables that are happening right now about award simplification, compliance and enforcement, greenfields agreements, casual definition, and annual agreements, none of that says penalty rates. So those discussions are only on the margins of those meetings, and that's just the truth. And the Attorney General is not really hearing anyone to bring those up and have a fight about it. Changes to penalty rates will happen over time. They will happen with individual meetings with the opposition. They will happen with individual meetings with the unions, Sally McManus, the UWU. They will happen over time. There is no leverage at this point. So when you talk about how you deal with unions and labor and liberals and business owners, normally you need a leverage. So you need something to get something. Well, right now we have the potential closure of up to 40% of all businesses in Australia. Well, that's a pretty big bit of leverage. And so as coronavirus continues to have a sawtooth up and down in the economy, our leverage to negotiate changes to penalty rates gets better. But as the economy improves, our leverage gets lower, because then the unions and labor talk about if employees get paid more, then the economy will recover. That argument is going to rage on in all sectors of the economy that pay penalty rates, which is just about everyone. So we are fighting for it. However, it is not the golden goose that's going to fix everything, and nor is it on the top of mind of anyone in government. It is actually at the bottom of their mind. And I know that that's hard to hear, but don't blame us for not fighting for them to be removed, because it is at the top of our agenda of things that we do in the IR space. Public holiday, penalty rates, nighttime penalties, all the penalties. They're at the top of our IR agenda. However, they're not at the top of the government's agenda, and you can't force it up because there's no leverage. So I'll pass it off to Tom.
Yeah, I think our short, I think to kind of run through this from a really kind of high level point is the way that we're speaking to the unions at the moment is around finding areas where we can get agreement and getting that agreement as quickly as possible. And I think the example around the restrictions that we were able to lift out of the restaurant award is a really, really good example of that. We got that. I think we were the second award to have that ticked off, maybe the third total. There's 250 something awards out there. We were number 3 off the list. It was because we went in there with a view to let's get as much agreement as we can as quickly as possible and get that agreement signed. Now, does that mean that we don't get everything that we want? Absolutely. And the fact that we were able to extend that again shows that we're able to achieve, whilst not everything that we would want on our wish list, we are able to get something achieved quickly, because the alternative is we get locked into talks with the unions for a year, nothing gets done, no one gets the ability to reduce those workers' hours down to 22.8 or down to 60% for a part-timer. And that, for me, a bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush. And that's kind of the way that we approach that negotiation with the unions. And that's going to be the way that we continue to do that. But I think the key point is there's going to be kind of 2 really, really big, or 3 really, really big levers that the federal government are going to have to pull to get the economy pumping again after this is all over, whenever that is. It could be 2 months from now, it could be a year from now, I don't know. The 3 levers are going to be tax, or the tax system more generally. It's going to be IR, and it's going to be skills. Those are going to be the 3 ways that the government's going to have to invest or really focus on reform in order to get the economy pumping again. And I think that the fact that the IR system has been so broadly kind of opened up, and they basically said to us and the unions, we will do anything. We will literally sign off on any proposal that you give us, provided that you guys can get agreement on it. That's the one thing that they've said to us very, very clearly, that they will literally sign off on anything as long as we can get agreement. And that's been the way that we're going to try and approach it. I'm hoping that we'll have some more news over the coming months as we continue the talks with unions around simplification and new ideas. And then you've obviously got the budget update in October for those other 2, which is tax and skills more generally. But, IR, when we kind of started to think about recovery for coronavirus, the number 1 issue on our to-do list was IR. It's the reason that me and Wes are getting out of bed in the morning and thinking proactively about what the industry needs. So to say that it's a priority for us is an understatement.
Great. Oh, and I think, Tom, are you able to share the document regarding wedding cancellations or how best to contact? I think, Tom, did you put your email up there for everybody to have access to?
I will, Tom.
Or we're going to put Anthea's. Anthea, would you like to share your email address?
Yeah, if you want to go through it. And then what I'll do, Anthea, is I'll provide the submission that we gave to the Victorian government. Granted, now it's obviously a bit moot, but that area around negotiating with your clients is a really important one, because, and I've kind of banged this drum a little bit, but the key point is if as a venue operator you stuff up the negotiation really, really badly, there is actually a risk that the state consumer affairs agency can kind of kick the door down and demand that you repay money, and they can fine you for the way that you deal with those contracts. It's very, very different from what other hospitality operators are used to. So it's really important that you show that you're trying to do it in with as much good faith as possible. I like to think the way that you want to go about negotiating with your landlord, when you actually reverse the situation, that's the situation that you are in as a business owner in dealing with that customer. You're the person who's got the money in the deposit, and you're trying to kind of negotiate an outcome to ensure the revenue comes through to you. It's actually a complete reversal. So we are here to help, and I'm happy to, whether you go through Anthea, and then I'm happy to provide those documents and help where we can, including advising on those specific circumstances to make sure that you guys are doing the right thing, by each kind of individual arrangement, because sometimes you find the brides or the grooms or are very, very reasonable in what they're doing. Sometimes you find that they're really unreasonable in what they're doing. And, our job is to give you some assistance in terms of navigating that arrangement.
Well, I hope it's been helpful to everybody to put a face to the names and also to meet some of the team directly and offer the opportunity to ask questions. We thank you very much for coming on today and to listening to us. And of course, you know where we are if you need any help or support. And of course, as we progress in the next few weeks, if we need to do another one of these, we're very happy to pull that together as well. So thank you to Anthea to organising and to getting everybody to come and register and hear about what we're doing and what we need to do. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
Guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.